Part 3 of Perseus from The Heroes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Heroes, or Greek Fairy Tales for My Children, by Charles Kingsley. Part 3, How Perseus Slew the Gorgon. So Perseus started on his journey, going dry-shod over land and sea, and his heart was high and joyful. For the winged sandals bore him each day a 7 days' journey. And he went by Cynthus, and by Ceos, and the pleasant Cyclades to Attica, and past Athens and Thebes, and the Copiac lake, and up the vale of Cephissus, and past the peaks of Oeta and Pindus, and over the rich Thessalian plains, till the sunny hills of Greece were behind him, and before him were the wilds of the north. Then he passed the Thracian mountains, and many a barbarous tribe, Paeons and Dardans and Triboli, till he came to the Ister stream, and the dreary Scythian plains. And he walked across the Ister dry-shod, and away through the moors and fens, day and night, toward the bleak northwest, turning neither to the right hand nor the left, till he came to the unshapen land, and the place which has no name. And 7 days he walked through it, on a path which few can tell, for those who have trodden it like least to speak of it, and those who go there again in dreams are glad enough when they awake. Till he came to the edge of the everlasting night, where the air was full of feathers, and the soil was hard with ice. And there at last he found the 3 grey sisters, by the shore of the freezing sea, nodding upon a white log of driftwood, beneath the cold white winter moon, and they chanted a low song together, why the old times were better than the new. There was no living thing around them, not a fly, not a moss upon the rocks, neither seal nor seagull dare come near, lest the ice should clutch them in its claws. The surge broke up in foam, but it fell again in flakes of snow, and it frosted the hair of the 3 grey sisters, and the bones of the ice cliffs above their heads. They passed the eye from one to the other, but for all that they could not see, and they passed the tooth from one to the other, but for all that they could not eat, and they sat in the full glare of the moon, but they were none the warmer for her beams. And Perseus pitied the 3 grey sisters, but they did not pity themselves. So he said, O venerable mothers, wisdom is the daughter of old age. You therefore should know many things. Tell me, if you can, the path to the Gorgon. Then one cried,
Who is this who reproaches us with old age?
And another,
This is the voice of one of the children of men.
And he, I do not reproach, but honour your old age, and I am one of the sons of men, and of the heroes. The rulers of Olympus have sent me to you to ask the way to the Gorgon. Then one,
There are new rulers in Olympus, and all new things are bad.
And another,
We hate your rulers, and the heroes, and all the children of men. We are the kindred of the Titans, and the giants, and the Gorgons, and the ancient monsters of the deep.
And another,
Who is this rash and insolent man who pushes unbidden into our world?
And the first,
There never was such a world as ours, nor will be. If we let him see it, he will spoil it all.
Then one cried,
"Give me the eye, that I may see him."
and another,
"Give me the tooth, that I may bite him."
But Perseus, when he saw that they were foolish and proud, and did not love the children of men, left off pitying them, and said to himself, "Hungry men must needs be hasty. If I stay making many words here, I shall be starved." Then he stopped close to them, and watched till they passed the eye from hand to hand; and as they groped about between themselves, he held out his own hand gently, till one of them put the eye into it, fancying that it was the hand of her sister. Then he sprang back and laughed, and cried, "Cruel and proud old women, I have your eye, and I will throw it into the sea, unless you tell me the path to the Gorgon, and swear to me that you will tell me right." Then they wept and chattered and scolded, but in vain. They were forced to tell the truth, though when they told it, Perseus could hardly make out the road.
"You must go," they said, "foolish boy, to the southward, into the ugly glare of the sun, till you come to Atlas the giant, who holds the heaven and the earth apart; and you must ask his daughters, the Hesperides, who are young and foolish like yourself. And now give us back our eye, for we have forgotten all the rest."
So Perseus gave them back their eye, but instead of using it, they nodded and fell fast asleep, and were turned into blocks of ice, till the tide came up and washed them all away. And now they float up and down like icebergs for ever, weeping whenever they meet the sunshine, and the fruitful summer, and the warm south wind, which fill young hearts with joy. But Perseus leaped away to the southward, leaving the snow and ice behind, past the isle of the Hyperboreans, and the Tin Isles, and the long Iberian shore, while the sun rose higher day by day upon a bright blue summer sea, and the terns and the seagulls swept laughing round his head, and called him to stop and play, and the dolphins gambolled up as he passed, and offered to carry him on their backs; and all night long the sea nymphs sang sweetly, and the Tritons blew upon their conchs, as they played round Galatea their queen, in her car of pearled shells. Day by day the sun rose higher, and leaped more swiftly into the sea at night, and more swiftly out of the sea at dawn, while Perseus skimmed over the billows like a seagull, and his feet were never wetted, and leapt from wave to wave, and his limbs were never weary, till he saw far away a mighty mountain, all rose red in the setting sun. Its feet were wrapped in forests, and its head in wreaths of cloud; and Perseus knew that it was Atlas, who holds the heavens and the earth apart. He came to the mountain, and leapt on shore, and wandered upward among pleasant valleys and waterfalls, and tall trees, and strange ferns and flowers; but there was no smoke rising from any glen, nor house, nor sign of man. At last he heard sweet voices singing, and he guessed that he was come to the garden of the nymphs, the daughters of the evening star. They sang like nightingales among the thickets, and Perseus stopped to hear their song, but the words which they spoke he could not understand, no, nor no man after him for many 100 years. So he stepped forward, and saw them dancing hand in hand around the charmed tree, which bent under its golden fruit; and round the tree foot was coiled the dragon, old Ladon, the sleepless snake, who lies there for ever, listening to the song of the maidens, blinking and watching with dry bright eyes. Then Perseus stopped, not because he feared the dragon, but because he was bashful before those fair maids. But when they saw him they too stopped, and called to him with trembling voices, "Who are you? Are you Heracles the mighty, who will come to rob our garden, and carry off our golden fruit?" And he answered, "I am not Heracles the mighty, and I want none of your golden fruit. Tell me, fair nymphs, the way which leads to the Gorgon, that I may go on my way and slay her." "Not yet, not yet, fair boy. Come dance with us around the tree in the garden which knows no winter, the home of the south wind and the sun. Come hither and play with us a while. We have danced alone here for 1,000 years, and our hearts are weary with longing for a playfellow. So come, come, come." "I cannot dance with you, fair maidens, for I must do the errand of the immortals. So tell me the way to the Gorgon, lest I wander and perish in the waves." Then they sighed and wept, and answered, "The Gorgon, she will freeze you into stone." "It is better to die like a hero than to live like an ox in a stall. The immortals have lent me weapons, and they will give me wit to use them." Then they sighed again, and answered, "Fair boy, if you are bent on your own ruin, be it so. We know not the way to the Gorgon, but we will ask the giant Atlas, above upon the mountain peak, the brother of our father, the silver evening star. He sits aloft and sees across the ocean, and far away into the unshapen land." So they went up to the mountain to Atlas their uncle, and Perseus went up with them. And they found the giant kneeling, as he held the heavens and the earth apart. They asked him, and he answered mildly, pointing to the seaboard with his mighty hand,
"I can see the Gorgons lying on an island far away, but this youth can never come near them, unless he has the hat of darkness, which whosoever wears cannot be seen."
Then cried Perseus, "Where is that hat, that I may find it?" But the giant smiled.
"No living mortal can find that hat, for it lies in the depths of Hades, in the regions of the dead. But my nieces are immortal, and they shall fetch it for you, if you will promise me one thing, and keep your faith."
Then Perseus promised, and the giant said,
"When you come back with the head of Medusa, you shall show me the beautiful horror, that I may lose my feeling and my breathing, and become a stone for ever. For it is weary labour for me to hold the heavens and the earth apart."
Then Perseus promised, and the eldest of the nymphs went down, and into a dark cavern among the cliffs, out of which came smoke and thunder, for it was one of the mouths of hell. And Perseus and the nymphs sat down 7 days, and waited trembling till the nymph came up again, and her face was pale, and her eyes dazzled with the light, for she had been long in the weary darkness, but in her hand was the magic hat. Then all the nymphs kissed Perseus, and wept over him a long while, but he was only impatient to be gone, and at last they put the hat upon his head, and he vanished out of their sight. But Perseus went on boldly, past many an ugly sight, far away into the heart of the unshapen land, beyond the streams of ocean, to the isles where no ship cruises, where is neither night nor day, where nothing is in its right place, and nothing has a name, till he heard the rustle of the Gorgons' wings, and saw the glitter of their brazen talons. And then he knew it was time to halt, lest Medusa should freeze him into stone. He thought a while with himself, and remembered Athene's words. He rose aloft into the air, and held the mirror of the shield above his head, and looked up into it, that he might see all that was below him. And he saw the 3 Gorgons sleeping as huge as elephants. He knew that they could not see him, because the hat of darkness hid him, and yet he trembled, and he sank down near them, so terrible were those brazen claws. 2 of the Gorgons were foul as swine, and lay sleeping heavily, as swine sleep, with their mighty wings outspread. But Medusa tossed to and fro restlessly, and as she tossed, Perseus pitied her. She looked fair and sad. Her plumage was like the rainbow, and her face was the face of a nymph. Only her eyebrows were knit, and her lips clenched, with everlasting care and pain. And her long neck gleamed so white in the mirror that Perseus had not the heart to strike, and said, "Ah, that it had been either of her sisters!" But as he looked, from among her tresses the vipers' heads awoke, and peeped up with their bright dry eyes, and showed their fangs, and hissed. And Medusa, as she tossed, threw back her wings, and showed her brazen claws. And Perseus saw that, for all her beauty, she was as foul and venomous as the rest. Then he came down and stepped to her boldly, and looked steadfastly on his mirror, and struck with Herpes stoutly once, and he did not need to strike again. Then he wrapped the head in the goatskin, turning away his eyes, and sprang into the air aloft, faster than he ever sprang before. For Medusa's wings and talons rattled as she sank dead upon the rocks, and her 2 foul sisters woke, and saw her lying dead. Into the air they sprang yelling, and looked for him who had done the deed. Thrice they swung round and round like hawks who beat for a partridge, and thrice they snuffed round and round like hounds who draw upon a deer. At last they struck upon the scent of the blood, and they checked for a moment to make sure, and then on they rushed with a fearful howl, while the wind rattled hoarse in their wings. On they rushed, sweeping and flapping like eagles after a hare, and Perseus's blood ran cold for all his courage as he saw them come howling on his track, and he cried, "Bear me well now, brave sandals, for the hounds of death are at my heels." And well the brave sandals bore him, aloft through the cloud and sunshine, across the shoreless sea, and fast followed the hounds of death, as the roar of their wings came down the wind. But the roar came down fainter and fainter, and the howl of their voices died away, for the sandals were too swift even for the Gorgons, and by nightfall they were far behind, 2 black specks in the southern sky, till the sun sank and he saw them no more. Then he came again to Atlas and the garden of the nymphs, and when the giant heard him coming he groaned and said,
"Fulfil thy promise to me."
Then Perseus held up to him the Gorgon's head, and he had rest from all his toil, for he became a crag of stone, which sleeps for ever far above the clouds. Then he thanked the nymphs, and asked them, "By what road shall I go homeward again? For I wandered far round in coming hither." And they wept, and cried, "Go home no more, but stay and play with us. the lonely maidens who dwell for ever far away from gods and men. But he refused, and they told him his road, and said, "Take with you this magic fruit, which, if you eat once, you will not hunger for 7 days. For you must go eastward and eastward ever, over the doleful Libyan shore, which Poseidon gave to Father Zeus, when he burst open the Bosphorus and the Hellespont, and drowned the fair Lectonian land. And Zeus took that land in exchange, a fair bargain, much bad ground for a little good; and to this day it lies waste and desert, with shingle and rock and sand." Then they kissed Perseus, and wept over him, and he leapt down the mountain, and went on, lessening and lessening, like a sea gull, away and out to sea. End of Part 3 of Perseus. Recording by Tysto, tysto.com.